Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today's topic is going to be about Reiki. What Reiki is, what it isn't, what it does, what it doesn't do. Okay, buckle up. All right, so Reiki is really one of my favorite things. The biggest side effect, right? The biggest side effect of Reiki is that it will relax you, right? There is nothing about Reiki that will create harm. Reiki is all about, it's really all about love. It's the best thing that I can do for myself as a Reiki master. I do Reiki on myself as often as possible. And yeah, in a session when I'm working on somebody, it's probably like for an hour, right? And could be a little bit longer, could be like an hour and a half, depends on the person, whatever kind of session they're looking for, right? But generally it's about an hour. When I do Reiki on myself, sometimes it can be like 2 hours, sometimes it can be 3 hours, because I use Reiki not just as a healing modality, which it is, I also use it as a form of meditation. So there's that. All right. So Reiki comes in, I was going to say it comes in 3 flavors. There are 3 levels to Reiki, at least the way that I do it. When Reiki started, it was like 1, right? And then one of the people who started the Reiki tradition, he broke it down into 3. So we'll discuss like the 3 levels. So the first level is called hands-on, and well, the technique is more like hands-on anyway. So the first level is the only level that you require in order to be a Reiki practitioner, right? And so it's like I was taught, you put your hands on, you're giving Reiki, you take your hands off, it stops, right? And the interesting thing that happened, all right, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, never mind. So you find a Reiki master, somebody that will like teach you. There's a thing called an attunement that takes place, and it attunes your energy to the energy of Reiki, right? And Reiki is really like the energy of the universe, right? And it flows through us. When we're doing a Reiki session, we fill ourselves with the energy of Reiki, and then we are a conduit. We're a conduit. We're a channel for the energy of Reiki. It comes in through us. We fill ourselves with Reiki. So as a Reiki practitioner, when I'm working on somebody, I receive the benefits of Reiki as well. So I fill myself, it flows through me through the hands, and then in a hands-on session, it's not a massage, it's not manipulation of the muscles, it's simply laying on of hands. And the energy flows from the practitioner, well, it flows from the universe to the practitioner into the recipient, right, the client. And so my job is to be open to receive the energy right? To be clear, to be focused. During a Reiki session, we set our intention about what the Reiki session is going to be for. And so I know what it is, and the client knows what it is. And as the universe is coming in and our guides are coming in, everybody is on the same page about what the Reiki energy, what that session is going to be for. So the energy flows and it goes towards that particular intention. Right? So the client's job, they're a participant in the session. Their job is to be open to receiving the energy and to let go of whatever the blockages are that are creating their issue. So a lot of people are open to receiving the energy, right? And that's good. Some people are not. Some people are intimidated. Some people are some people want to say that they're open, but then they're not open. And some people are not open to releasing whatever the blockages are, because a lot of people want to identify themselves as their illness, as their dis-ease, whether they are a cancer patient, whether they have some sort of an autoimmune disease, whether they have like migraines, whatever they're having, right? They want to identify as that particular illness, and they don't necessarily want to let it go. Right? I don't know why. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. Personally, I believe that Reiki can heal anything. There are just some things that are, we'll say, that are more difficult to be released out of the body. Whether that is because, all right, so it's going to take a minute here. I believe that every illness is an autoimmune disease, first of all. And every illness has a spiritual cause to it, right? Like, I believe that cancer is related to anger, because both things, they eat you, right? Like, anger is like, I'm so consumed by anger, right? Like that. And so Reiki, so cancer eats it, like, the tumor, whatever, it does the same thing. So, and a lot of times an illness can be related to fear, or it could be related to anger, or it could be related to like resentments, which is still anger, right? And like, people have trauma, which creates illness, and that is still being consumed by fear and anger. And so some people, they don't really know what to do with their life without the anger, without the fear. Like, who am I going to be without this, right? And they don't really know how to let that go, because then what are they going to do, right? And so their job, the client's job, is to be willing to receive and be willing to let go. And my job is to go in and fill the person with the Reiki energy and to pull out it's not just about pulling out the disease, but it is about restoring the person to balance. You have like 7 major chakras in your body. And if you're watching this channel, you probably know what that is. However, there are actually more than 7. I think there's like, I haven't counted for a while, and I haven't had to like think about how many, but there's probably like 20. You have one that is above your head, which is the soul star. That is your direct connection to it's your direct connection to spirit. Right? It's where your energy comes in and it flows in through the body. You have your crown chakra, which is your spirituality. And if it's blocked, then there's a blockage to your spirituality. When it's open, it's like you can have a direct connection to like God energy or whatever that is about for you. When I became a Reiki master and that opened, that switch flipped. I immediately started being able to do like past life readings. Like I just would like see people's like past lives, and it just started happening. And like I could do it before, but it was more I would have to go into like a deep kind of like meditation, and it was a whole process. Now it's like I can look at somebody, I can ask about it, and then I just automatically start seeing it. So there's that. Then you have your third eye. Everybody knows about most people know about the third eye, right? And it's related to clairvoyance, right? Clairvoyance is clear vision, right? It allows us to create and it allows us to, basically like see the future, right? So I was clairvoyant before, but now it's more so because I came to Reiki already as a psychic. So I was already doing psychic work and readings and, all of that. But this is it just allowed it to be more, right? So when people are learning Reiki, when they're receiving the attunements, it can and usually does open up your psychic ability, right? And it usually does like change your path in life. So it's like you can be going along doing this in your life, right? And when you receive your first level attunement, it can go like this, and it can like change your path because of a level of spirituality that you didn't have before, right? Because it does open your chakras in a certain way, and when you're more balanced, it's like, it helps you to be able to realize to become real. It can realize your potential more. So then when you receive the second attunement, it can go like this, right? And when you receive the third attunement, it can go like this, right? So very different. And so for me, when I came to Reiki, I had a lot of trauma in my body, in my system, in my spirit. there's a lot of stuff going on, and I was on a very downward spiral, we'll call it, negative path. And like I was working my way out of it, but it was like really very difficult, right? So then I started learning Reiki. I started doing Reiki on myself, and I believe that Reiki saved my life because I did have an autoimmune disease. I still have an autoimmune disease. But there's still a lot of like fear inside, and so there's that. And but it's like so much better than it has been in the past, right? So much better. It's like night and day. It's like I don't usually think about it. But apparently there's still some in there. And recently I've shaken up my system, and there's been like a lot more that has like come out. So we'll see. I'm always working on it, which we'll get into. Don't hang up yet. Stay tuned. Do you have your tea? Do you have your coffee? Do you have your water? Do you have some beverage? Okay. So you put the Reiki in and you pull this stuff out, right? So, and it may not happen in one session, right? There are things that can happen in one session. And I was like, for example, I was working on this woman, and she had gone to an eye doctor. I don't know if she had like LASIK surgery. She went to an eye doctor for something, and it left her with a ringing in her head. And there's a thing about Reiki that can change the pathways of energy in your system. It can create new neural pathways, but it can redirect the energy. That's the word I was looking for. It can redirect the energy in your body. So I had never tried to do this before. I was relatively new with the Reiki energy, but I knew that it could happen. So I was like, okay, let's see about doing this thing for this woman. And I live in Massachusetts, and she lived in Wisconsin. So this was going to be her first session with me, her only session with me. And so whatever. So she came in for the session, and when we were done, it was like an hour, right? When we were done, the ringing was almost gone. She went back to Wisconsin, and by the time she got to Wisconsin, the ringing had stopped. So it happened. So one of the things about a Reiki session, right, is that just because you have your session and like I take my hands off doesn't mean the Reiki energy stops, right? When I'm done, I put a protective circle around the person, a protective shield around them, and then I ask that the Reiki energy continue to heal and harmonize the person, their inside with their outside, their right with their left, their front with their back, top to the bottom. And so it allows the energy to continue to flow within the person. It continues to do what it's doing. And I usually tell people, as kind of like a tongue-in-cheek thing, like don't go home and start moving furniture, because then the energy goes towards that instead of towards like you. So there's that. The other thing is that like I tell people, it's like if you have a pain in your shoulder and you come to me and we work on the shoulder pain, right? But the shoulder pain is being caused by you carrying a backpack, and you're only carrying it on one shoulder, and it's meant to be on both shoulders, and then you continue to do that, right? Then we're sort of wasting our time. So your job is to, when you go home or when you go about your life, that you also have to change things. And so usually, because I do work as a psychic and I can see how things are happening, I can usually tell people what it is that is causing this thing within them, and then it's their job to alter that somehow or another. And some people don't. Some people want to continue their path in life. They want to continue doing what it is that they're doing. So, it's kind of like a waste. So there's that whole session. So it really is up to, my job is to provide the Reiki energy and to have discussion about what it is that is causing the dis-ease and how it can be let go of in your daily life, right? I'm not a doctor, okay? So I don't prescribe medication. I supply this energy and release of things out of your system that can be causing your disease, right? And so sometimes it can be done in one session, sometimes depending upon how deep-seated, we'll say, depending upon how deep-seated the issue is, sometimes it can take more, right? It's the same thing if somebody has cancer, right? And they're going for, chemo, it's not a one-time, it's not a one-and-done thing, right? Or a massage session, right? It's there's some relief, but it's not necessarily completely done. Right? It's the same thing with Reiki. Sometimes you require more than one session. Depends on how deep-seated your anger is, depends on how deep-seated your fear is, depends on how deep-seated, whatever. And you also have to believe that the Reiki energy can work, right? The more you're open, this is what I tell people, is the more that you are open to receiving, the more that you are open to letting go, that's the main thing. The more you're open to receiving, the more that you're open to letting go, the more I can go in, the more I can pull things out, the more I can balance, the more it's the deeper in that I can go. And when I'm working on somebody, I never know where I'm gonna go. Sometimes it is just this life and it's this thing and it's relatively simple. Sometimes I do past life healing, and I ask to go in, and wherever it is, I follow the path, I follow the trail. So wherever it is, I go in and I see the multiple lifetimes, and I send the energy towards those lifetimes, and I pull things out of multiple lifetimes, and then that creates a ripple effect, right? When you heal the past, right, you're over here, this is your past. When I'm healing the past, it creates a ripple effect, and it creates more freedom, it creates more happiness and things like that in the present time. So that's what I do. One of the things that I do anyway. And so there's that. What else? What else do we want to talk about? So, oh yes. So the third chakra is that, and it's all about your creative vision, things like that. the throat chakra is about communication, right? And so a lot of times people have like fear of communication. Sometimes, if you've had trauma, right, and it's like, and it takes your voice away, something like that, right? Then the people are afraid of speaking up, or uh, things of that nature, right? But that's also connected to the ears, right? Because communication is a two-way street, right? It's like you're receiving information through your ears and it's coming out your mouth, right? So there's this communication factor like that, right? And so it's the same thing with the third eye, right? Your third eye is connected to your regular eyes, right? So when I'm doing Reiki on somebody, right, when I'm doing the third eye, right, I'm also doing Reiki on your eyes, because when you're out in the world, right, you see, some people have seen trauma, right, and trauma doesn't have to be, like what you would think of as trauma. We won't go into that, right, but sometimes trauma can just be people like yelling at other people. Sometimes it can be like road rage. Sometimes it can be it can be any kind of like negative thing that you're watching, right? Whether you are watching something negative that is happening on TV, or whether it's something that you're seeing, in your daily life, right? Depends on where you live and what your scene is, right? um, and sometimes people are desensitized, right? And that's not necessarily a good thing. So there's that. Um, so yeah, so if I'm like working on your eyes and working on your ears, things that you're hearing, things that you're seeing, right? Then, or if you're staying in particular situations where you're not allowed to speak your truth, where you're not allowed to, like, where you're not allowed to like kind of get away from the negative views of things, then that stuff can continue. And so you have to you know maybe do some sort of like an adjustment about that. But I do pull out like trauma out of the eyes and out of the ears and out of the throat and things like that. And then we move to the heart chakra. And so the top three chakras are connected to your spirit. The heart chakra is the go-between, and it's the go-between between your spirit life and your physical life on the planet. The lower three chakras are how you are connected to the planet in your physical body, in your physical life, right? And so your heart chakra is all about like your emotions, right? It's all about like love and how you love yourself, how you love others, how you're capable of receiving love, right? And as an empath is somebody that feels what other people feel. So as an empath, that can open more, so you're able to feel more, you're able to give more. And as an empath, we feel things across time, right? It's not just about things that are happening presently. It is like you can feel things coming at you, right? Like sometimes it's like a day in the future, sometimes it's like a week, and sometimes it's more. So as somebody that operates, I operate anyway as an empath. And so the more I do Reiki, the further across in time I'm able to feel things coming. And sometimes I tell people things like when I'm doing a reading for them, because I do work as a psychic as well as teaching Reiki, and sometimes I'll tell people, oh, this thing is like happening, or there's potential for this thing to happen, and this is what you can do to alter that timeline, right? and they're like, oh, that's not going to happen, and blah blah blah. Like, I don't see how that could happen. And then I'm like, well, I'm watching it happen, and this is how it looks like it's happening. And they don't believe it, and then it happens. It's like, whatever. I told this woman, oh, like, I don't think they're going to be working at this job. They're like, oh, I love my job and blah blah blah, whatever. Right, the next day they were fired. So, whatever. So it's all of that. But anyway, so sometimes for me, like, readings and the Reiki can be sort of like combined. But in this particular instance, we're trying to just talk about like the Reiki session. And so you have your heart chakra, right? And your heart chakra is all about love, and loving yourself is really the best thing that you can do, right? And sometimes it's difficult, like, especially if you've had like particular levels of trauma, it can be difficult to love yourself. It can be difficult to receive love. And so if it is difficult to receive love, then it can be difficult to receive the Reiki energy in ways that are going to be like actually like helpful for you. So if you have like trauma, right, and if you have certain like quote unquote diseases, right, and like I'm thinking about a person I know in particular, and I've done Reiki on them, and according to them, they would say that it didn't do them any good, right? When that's not necessarily true, because there were things that happened for them, and they have identified it as having done these things for them. But maybe it didn't like release the disease, but it's because they weren't really open to receiving that kind of love. They're not used to receiving that kind of love. So what are you going to do, right? So the more, like, Reiki is all about receiving love, right? And so the more you're able to do that, the more the more healing in your spirit you're able to receive, and the more healing is allowed to happen. And as I'm talking about this, I'm just having this whole kind of revelation about things in my own life. And I recently started a path in my life, and it's starting to shake things loose out of my system that I haven't been able to release in the past, because I haven't had somebody who actually believed in me in the level that I wanted them to believe in me. And because we all need support, right? And so I feel like I've released like enough toxic people out of my life, and now I'm on this path about bringing in new people into my life, and people that believe in me and want to help me. So it's being very interesting to me about that. Like, I've been watching things inside of me being like shaken loose. Like, I had a dream, and in the dream I was in this house, and when you're dreaming about a house, it's your life. And in this house that I was dreaming about, there are like several different floors, and in the dream, each floor is like it was filled with all of this garbage, right? And so when I woke up, I started doing Reiki on myself in order to remove all of the garbage, all of the trash out of all of those like different floors. And so what the dream was talking about is that in my life, on many different levels, there has been sort of like trauma. There has been, um, these negative things that have like cluttered my life. And they were so deep seated that they weren't able to be released. And through this one conversation with this person, it like shook loose a whole bunch of stuff. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. It was like having a conversation with one person who was willing to believe in me and wanted to help me in my life. And so I was able to go through and clear out a bunch of stuff on these, like, and so I think it was like all these different chakras in my body. And so I was able to go through and clear a bunch of stuff out that I wasn't able to get it before. And so that's really cool, right? And that's how these things work, right? Because sometimes the Reiki energy will go in and it will do these things on its own because it can be released energetically, right? Like cancer can be released energetically. It's like you may not necessarily require medication. You may not require treatment. Depends on how open you are to receiving that kind of love and that kind of like energy, and how open you are to receiving or releasing that kind of energy. And so yeah. So it's the same. This is the same way that they say this is the same way that Jesus and Buddha healed, in that the way that Jesus healed was that he saw your body as being healed, and he filled you with like so much love that it just released whatever it is that was inside of you. And like, I'm not Jesus. So with Jesus, people believed that he could do this, and so they were open to receiving on that level, and so it happened. But he also instructed them to not discuss the thing with other people, because it's something that could like recreate the trauma in them, right? So because I'm not Jesus, people don't necessarily have that sort of like faith, right? But I am finding the more I do this, the more faith I have. And so there's all this stuff that is like trying to happen in my life these days, because my spirituality is increasing as I'm moving forward, and it's becoming more and more intense and things like that. And the more I meditate, the more it happens. So there's that. So you have that chakra, your heart chakra. You next have the solar plexus, which is about your ego and your will, and it's connected to the sun, right? So it's all about like your ego, your will, and it's where like fear can get trapped in like in your stomach, right? And like weight, like I am overweight, and so your solar plexus is all about like your ego, your will, and it's something where fear can get trapped in there, right? Or people who are overweight, they are usually consumed by fear. And so in my life, I have been looking to release fear out of my life. And like I'm getting to a place where it can be released in a much, much bigger way. I feel like I'm at this place where I'm actually ready to just like drop like a whole huge amount of like fear. So I could really release just like 100 pounds. Right? And because weight is not really about like your how much you eat and how much um calories and whatever, right? um People consume food, yes, and there is all of that, but it's usually like fear based. So, and it's because of a lack of like self-love, right? So when you're able to love yourself more, when you're able to release more fear, you're able to then release the habit of like eating the food. Because when you're in a place of like fear and you're eating the food can become toxic. So your body really has a way of being able to process anything that you're putting into your body. It's just that if you're eating in a particular mindset, then that food then becomes toxic, and then that food becomes, it's a whole like kind of roller coaster thing. So it's like that. And so there's like fear that sits in there, there's anger that's where like self-will happens and everything like that, right? And so that's you're pulling that in. And as an empath, we usually say that we feel things in our stomach, right? So when you're in these like fearful places, when you're talking to these people or seeing these things, right, as an empath, we feel things that other people feel, and then those things like sit with us. And so fine, like that person then goes away, but you're still holding on to that like fear that happened. And so if you don't find ways to release that, then that sits with you. I mean, so you have to find ways to let go of that kind of fear, right? And you may pull that out of that other person, right? So they're going on with their jolly life, right? Not necessarily a jolly life, right? But that fear may have been removed from them. If you're having a conversation with them, they're dumping it on you, right? They're talking to you about it, and then you receive it. It's no longer with them, but then you have to then release it out of your system. And so this is one of the reasons why I do Reiki daily, because there's like so much stuff that is floating around out in the world. And so like I constantly have to be like clearing my energy, right? And so there's always like something going on, right? And then the second chakra is your creative energy, the sacral. And that's where when I'm doing readings with people, that's where I look for love in their life. It can be, it's where like the place where like women have babies, it's connected to that energy. And so it can be your creative projects, it can be, you know, as an artist, right? It can be all of that kind of energy. And um, it's how you're creating your life, how you're manifesting things in your life as well. And so it's all of that kind of energy. And like men don't have babies, but they also do create, right? They create businesses, they create, they do help create like life, right? So there is that. It's not just women that have babies, right? It's like men that also contribute to that, right? And so I'm just having these like revelations as I'm like talking about this. It's like I know these things, but I'm having like a deeper kind of like revelation. And so that's been a good thing, right? And so yeah. So you have the second chakra, which is all about that. Then you have your root chakra. Right. So the second chakra is another way that you're being connected to people, right? It is another place about like it's part of your creativity, right? It's called like the seed of creativity. This is the second chakra, the sixth chakra up here. This is creative vision. The second chakra is the seed of creativity. It's how it's like being brought into your life, right? So you can see it here, but it becomes made physical in the second chakra. So there's that, right? The root chakra, the root chakra is about survival, right? The root chakra is about your money, your finances, your home, all of that, right? So if you have this sort of like fear about your home, right, or about your food or about your money, that's all going to happen in the root chakra. So it's like when you're releasing this sort of like fear about money, fear about food, fear about these things, right? And so people who have had trauma in their childhood, they hold a lot of this trauma in their first chakra. So it can be really difficult for people. It doesn't have to be, but it can be really difficult for people to let go of that kind of trauma. Right? So we put the Reiki energy in there, and your first chakra is also your inner child, right? That's where your inner child lives. So recently, and I've been doing Reiki a long time, right? And so I get these epiphanies and I get these things that happen over time. And and I've been working a lot on like my own fear and my own anger and my own issues, right? And it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, like all the time, right? And my experience is like the deeper you go, the more you realize how deep it can go. Right? Because it's not necessarily just this lifetime. It can be other lifetimes that are creating trauma and things like that in this lifetime. It may not be as like deep as like it was in the first lifetime, but it's something that can be carried over into this lifetime. So I've lately have been doing work. When I'm working on people doing Reiki, I've started working on their inner child, right? So it's like you have this body, this life, right? But then your physicality body here, but then you also have your inner child. So when I'm doing work on the inner child, that helps on like so many levels with the root chakra. And then that, like, when you're working on one chakra, it has a domino effect. So when you're working on one chakra, it will, like, if you're working on your root chakra, it will help clear things in your second chakra, that will help clear things in the third, help clear things in the fourth, the fifth, sixth, like that, right? Or if you're working here, it will have a domino effect going down. So there's all of this stuff that happens, and so it can be pretty intense, right? And it's pretty intense for me, and it can be pretty intense for other people. It can, like, when I'm doing work on somebody, when I'm doing Reiki on somebody, they can have an energetic release. Sometimes it can have like an emotional few days afterwards. Sometimes it can, um, sometimes they can have like an emotional breakdown, tears, stuff like that. When I'm working on people, I've seen their bodies like shake, right? Because it's like shaking out of their body. Right? With women, I'm not saying it has happened with every woman, but I have done work on some women and it has triggered their period. Why would it trigger their period? And it would trigger their period because for women, that is a release, right? That is a toxic release system, right? So, um, And it's happened a couple of times, right? A few different times. I don't remember how many, maybe like 4 or 5 women it's triggered that. And, so there's that. Um, so no, it's not going to happen every time. So I don't usually bring that up to women when I'm doing Reiki on them, but it has happened. Right? And so it can it can cause you to go through a sweat, right? Because that's like an emotional release, and it can. All right, so Reiki is something that can do this like an instantaneous sort of like a healing thing, right? Or over the next like week or so, it can put you through this emotional roller coaster situation, right? And so yeah, it can help heal your body itself in that way, right? However, my experience also is that it can bring you to the people. Like, if you don't really believe that it's something that can happen in the here and now, it can bring you to like a particular doctor, or it can bring you to a particular therapist. It can bring you to a different place that will that you will believe that that person can help you, and then it will help you in that way. So it can work that way as well, because I've seen that happen, right? So it depends on you, really. It depends on the client, how open they are to receiving from the session. So that's going to be our discussion for right here, right now with the Reiki. Oh, the second level Reiki, we'll talk about that for a minute. So the second level Reiki can, what that does is that opens you up to be, so when you have your first attunement, it opens you up, it turns the Reiki on, right? It allows you to do this like on a very basic level, right? So the second level opens you, and you're taught how to do Reiki at a distance. And so also with the so when you do the first level, it's like you're just sending Reiki energy at somebody, right? It's like so Reiki has a life of its own, and it will, it does no harm, and it just will like send all this energy at somebody, right? With the second level, you're given different tools, we'll call them. There are different symbols that you learn in the second level Reiki. And with those tools, it's like you then have like a scalpel, right? Instead of a hammer, you now have a scalpel, and you can go in and you can put energy in, and you're able to bring energy out, and you're able to do that sort of a thing. Right? And you're also with the second level, you could be able to do past life readings, right? You could be able to do like past life healing. When I did my second attunement, I was involved in a group, and so it was like a thing doing like all 3 levels, and I already had done my first level Reiki, but in this one I redid the first, but I also did the second and third. So that's why at that point I immediately started doing like past life readings, right? We did all 3 sessions in a weekend, and it's not necessarily recommended that you do that, but it could be done, depends on you. So like I was already working with energy. The group that I was with, we were already working with energy. So so it did that whole thing. So yeah. So the second level, you can do like distance healing, and you can do past life healing in that way as well. um, so now I do that as well, and so with the distance healing, right, I do, like, I'm in Massachusetts. I do work on people that are in California. I do work on people that are in Michigan. I do work on people that are in New Hampshire. Like, and I've done work on people who are, different places. Also in Massachusetts, if they can't come to me, then I've done Reiki. You know, like, technically, if they can come to me, it's much better, and I wouldn't necessarily do a distant healing on that person if they can come to me. However, if they can't, or it's not, feasible for them to get here, then I would do a distant session with them. And so that's okay too, right? Um, some people don't really believe in the whole like distance thing, so they're not necessarily going to get as much benefit out of that, and that's on them, right? Spirit does not care about time or distance. So, um, so when I'm doing Reiki, it doesn't matter where you are, right? And when I first started learning about energy and working with energy, I was taught to go to the person, right? With Reiki, you're taught bring the person to you, bring their energy, bring their spirit to you. You do work on the spirit, and then you send that back. I don't do that. I astral project to where the person is, and then I do the work on the person while they're there, and they receive it like real time. So it's like that. And then after that, like, all the other things still apply. Whether you're working on like whatever chakra, whatever thing you're doing, it doesn't matter. The third level is that the third level of Reiki is that you are then able to do the attunements with other people. However, you're then able to do healing work on the person's soul. And when I first started, when I first did the Reiki Master attunement, I wasn't really doing that. And don't ask me why. I don't know why. I just wasn't. And then I started doing that, and it completely like changed how I was doing the sessions or the benefits that people were receiving from it. So now I do that, and it's really interesting to me. So that's what we're going to discuss about like the Reiki and the chakra system and how things can work. So good luck with all of that. If you're interested in Reiki, you can like let me know. So, yep. All right. Thank you so much. Great. Bye. Be well. Love and light to you.